Our big birthday week starts with Blake's birthday, a truly special family day. Real story, EP2. It was 5:47 a.m., and the silence in the house was thick enough to be cut with a butter knife. I know that sounds like a cliché, but in our house, at that hour, it was the truth. The only sound was the low, rhythmic hum of the central air conditioning kicking on, a sound that had become the white noise of our lives. I was lying in bed, not quite asleep, not quite awake, suspended in that beautiful, dreamy purgatory that exists right before the sun comes up. My wife, Sarah, was asleep next to me, her breathing deep and even. She was curled up in her signature position, a tight little ball of blankets on her side of the bed, a habit she'd had since the day we were married. But I was awake. And not just awake, but buzzing. It was the feeling you get the night before a massive vacation or the first day of a new job. It was a feeling of giddy anticipation that was almost painful to contain. I stared at the ceiling, my mind already racing through the day ahead. It's funny how a single date on the calendar can hold so much weight, so much meaning. For the rest of the world, it was just another Tuesday. But for us, it was the kickoff to our big birthday week, and it all started with Blayke. Blayke, our firstborn, our practice child, as we affectionately and slightly jokingly call him. The one who taught us how to be parents, who bore the brunt of our newbie mistakes, our over-researching, and our frantic late-night Googling of baby rashes. He was the one who made Sarah and me a family, transforming us from a couple who were just married into a mom and a dad. And now he was turning another year older. It felt like just yesterday he was taking his first wobbly steps across our living room rug, and now, here he was, a full-blown kid with his own opinions, his own laugh, his own distinct personality. My alarm was set for 6 a.m., but at 5:52, I couldn't take it anymore. The suspense was killing me. I slipped out of bed, trying not to make a sound, my bare feet landing silently on the hardwood floor. The cold shock of the wood against my soles made me wince, but it was a welcome jolt. I crept over to my side of the closet and pulled on a pair of sweatpants and a t-shirt. I had a mission. A birthday morning mission. It was a tradition that had started when Blayke was just 2. I would get up early, long before the sun was fully up, and I would start cooking his favorite breakfast. Today, it was pancakes. Not just any pancakes, but the giant, fluffy, diner-style pancakes that he always asked for when we went out for brunch. He loved them with chocolate chips and a mountain of whipped cream. I shuffled down the hallway, my eyes still adjusting to the dim light of the early morning. The hallway was my favorite part of the house. It was lined with photos of our life together. Our wedding, the babies, the vacations, the silly candid shots that captured our family in its truest form. I paused for a second by a picture of Blayke from when he was about 3, his face smeared with chocolate cake, grinning from ear to ear. My heart swelled. That kid could get away with murder just by flashing that grin. When I reached the living room, the house felt like a different place. It was empty, quiet, and seemed to be holding its breath. The sunlight was just starting to peek through the slats of the window blinds, casting long, thin shadows on the floor. A faint layer of dust motes danced in the pale light, floating lazily in the air. I took a deep breath. There's a special kind of peace that comes with being the only person awake in a house full of sleeping people. It's a stolen moment of pure solitude, a quiet respite before the beautiful chaos begins. I made my way into the kitchen and started pulling out the ingredients. I'm a measured person by nature. In my work, I deal with spreadsheets and data and precise planning. But making pancakes is where I get a little loose, a little creative. I grabbed the giant mixing bowl, the kind that we use for big batches of chili or mashed potatoes, and cracked a few eggs into it. I whisked the flour, the baking powder, a pinch of salt, and a generous amount of sugar. I added a splash of vanilla extract and a secret ingredient, a little bit of almond extract that I never told anyone about. It gave the pancakes a subtle, nutty flavor that made them taste just a little bit more special. As I whisked the batter, my mind wandered. I thought about the first year we celebrated Blayke's birthday. We were living in that tiny, cramped apartment on the other side of town. We had barely any money, and Sarah and I were exhausted all the time from the sleepless nights. The party was just the 3 of us. We got a grocery store cake, and Blayke just smashed his hands into it, frosting flying everywhere. We were so tired we nearly fell asleep before we even had a chance to sing Happy Birthday. But we were so happy. That moment felt like a lifetime ago. We had been so young, so naive, but our hearts were so full. It was in that tiny apartment that we first learned what it meant to be a family. The clatter of a pan on the stove brought me back to the present. I turned on the burner and let the pan heat up. I sprayed a little nonstick spray and watched as the butter sizzled and melted. As I ladled the first dollop of batter into the pan, the scent of warm vanilla and butter started to fill the room. It was the official scent of a birthday morning. It was the smell of love, of tradition, of today is your day. As I was flipping a particularly large pancake, I heard a noise from upstairs. It was a soft little shuffle, the sound of small feet padding across the floor. Then there it was, the creak of the second stair from the top. This creak is notorious in our house. You can't avoid it. It's like a little announcement system telling you someone is coming. I smiled to myself. The first soldier was up. I continued to focus on the pancakes, but I could feel a pair of eyes watching me from the entryway to the kitchen. I glanced up. It was Blayke. He was standing there, rubbing his eyes with his little fists, his hair sticking up in about 10 different directions. He was still in his pajamas, a pair of space-themed ones with little aliens on them, and he looked like he had just rolled out of a rocket ship. He was still half asleep, his movements slow and deliberate. "Morning, champ," I said, my voice soft so as not to shock him fully awake. "Happy birthday." He didn't say anything. He just kept rubbing his eyes and staring at the sizzling pan. Then, a slow, sleepy smile spread across his face. It was the most genuine, pure expression of happiness I'd ever seen. It was unscripted and real. That smile made all my early morning efforts completely worth it. It's like seeing the sun break through the clouds after a week of rain. His smile can light up a whole room. Who else would they be for? I joked, winking at him. "Get ready. These are going to be the best pancakes you've ever had." He shuffled over to his designated spot at the kitchen island, a little stool that was just the right height for him. He rested his head on his arms on the counter and watched me work, his eyes blinking slowly. I loved this quiet moment with him. I could see the sleep slowly melting away and the day dawning in his eyes. He was turning into such a big boy, but right then, in that sleepy haze, he looked just like the little toddler who used to toddle into the kitchen and wrap his arms around my legs. Just then, I heard more footsteps. This time, they were heavier, the stampede that could only mean one thing. The rest of the pack was awake. I heard the thumping, pounding, and excited squealing coming from the stairs. "Daddy, is it Blayke's birthday? Is it? Is it?" It was Lily, our middle child. Her voice got higher with each question. And just like that, the peaceful silence of the house was shattered in the most wonderful way possible. Lily burst into the kitchen like a tiny hurricane, her red hair flying everywhere. She was followed closely by little Mason, our youngest, who was still clutching his favorite stuffed bunny, Buster. He looked slightly overwhelmed by the commotion, but his eyes were wide with excitement. The scene was complete chaos. Lily was jumping up and down, yelling, "Happy birthday," at the top of her lungs. Mason was trying to get a glimpse of the pancakes, standing on his tiptoes. And then, of course, there was Sarah. Sarah walked in, a knowing smile on her face. She was wrapped in her robe, her hair in a messy bun, and she was the most beautiful woman I had ever seen. She moved through the kitchen chaos with a serene grace, navigating around the jumping children, and came to stand beside me. She rested her hand on my back and gave it a gentle rub. "It already is," she said, leaning in to kiss me on the cheek. Then, she turned to Blayke, and her voice changed to a bright, enthusiastic tone. "Happy birthday, my big boy." She enveloped him in a hug, and the feel of it was so real I could almost feel the comfort radiating from her. "Look at you. You're so big." Breakfast was a glorious affair. It was messy and loud, and everything I wanted it to be. I had made a mountain of pancakes, and the kids dove in like they hadn't eaten in a week. Syrup was everywhere. It was on their faces, their hands, the counter, and I'm pretty sure I saw some on the ceiling. Lily was meticulously arranging her pancakes into little towers, while Mason was just shoveling them into his mouth as fast as he could, Buster the bunny sitting propped up beside him as a witness to the feast. Blayke, the birthday boy, was sitting there with a massive plate of pancakes, a thick layer of whipped cream on top, and the biggest smile on his face. He looked so happy, so content. In that moment, it wasn't about the presents or the party, it was just about the love. It was a simple act of service, a home-cooked meal prepared with love, and it was creating a memory he would carry with him for the rest of his life. As we were all finishing up, Sarah caught my eye. She had a mischievous look on her face, the same one she gets when she's planning something. I knew that look. That was the "let's make this day even more special" look. And right then the day felt perfect. It felt like the beginning of something huge. We all went upstairs to get ready for the day. The morning rush in our house is like a well-choreographed, though slightly frantic, dance. We're all moving around each other, trying to get to the bathroom, trying to find matching socks, trying to decide who gets to pick the music in the car. But today was different. Today, there was an extra layer of excitement in the air. We were all moving to the rhythm of Blayke's birthday. The plan for the day was simple: a family outing. We live in a city that's constantly buzzing, so we decided to take Blayke to his favorite place in the world, the big city aquarium. He's obsessed with marine life. He knows all the names of the fish, which ones are poisonous, and he can tell you more about sea turtles than any 7-year-old should know. He's been talking about the giant octopus exhibit for weeks. But before we could get to the aquarium, Sarah said there was something else we needed to do. She said it was a birthday surprise. I didn't ask any questions. I've learned that with Sarah, it's always better to just go with the flow. She's a master at creating magical moments, and her ability to make the ordinary feel extraordinary is one of the things I love most about her. We piled into the family minivan, a beautiful, spacious, gas-guzzling beast that has seen more crumbs and juice spills than a daycare center. Getting everyone buckled in is an exercise in logistics and patience. There's always one child who can't find their seatbelt, one who needs help with their shoes, and one who is arguing about what movie we're going to watch on the drive. But eventually, we were all strapped in and we were off. Sarah had given me the directions, and as I was driving, I realized where we were going. We were heading to the park. Not just any park, but the park where Blayke had his very first birthday party. It was a tiny little neighborhood park, the kind with the old-school metal slide that gets hot in the sun and the swings that squeak. It was a park that held so many memories. It was where we had his first smash-the-cake photo, where he took his first steps on the grass. It was a spot that was sacred to us. The treasure hunt turned out to be a little walk down memory lane that Sarah had organized for Blayke. She had hidden a series of clues around the park, each one leading to a different memory. The first clue, tied to the swing set, had a picture of a 1-year-old Blayke on the swings with his grandparents. The second clue, taped to the side of the slide, had a picture of a 2-year-old Blayke with a face full of cake. We walked around the whole park, Blayke's eyes bright with recognition as he remembered each spot. It was a beautiful, private ceremony of remembrance. It was a way of showing Blayke just how much he was loved, not just today, but every single day of his life. It was a testament to the journey we have all been on together. My heart was so full it felt like it might burst. Watching my wife, this incredible woman, orchestrate this for our son, I was just overwhelmed with love for my whole family. After the park, we finally made our way to the aquarium. And if I thought the park was emotional, the aquarium was a whole different level of awe. It's a massive building, all glass and steel, but the moment you walk inside, you feel like you've been transported to another world. The air is cool and damp, and the only light comes from the massive, glowing tanks that line the walls. We walked through the first tunnel, and a massive sea turtle swam right over our heads. It was so close we could see the patterns on its shell, the slow, graceful way it moved through the water. The kids were speechless. Mason was pointing, his mouth hanging open. Lily was pressed against a glass, trying to get as close as possible. And Blayke, the birthday boy, was just staring up at the turtle with a look of pure, unadulterated wonder. In that light, he didn't look like a 7-year-old. He looked like a little explorer, a scientist discovering a new world. We spent hours there. We watched the jellyfish float in their glowing tanks, their tentacles trailing behind them like delicate ribbons. We saw the sharks, sleek and powerful, gliding through the water. The kids were fascinated, full of questions. Daddy, why are sharks so scary? Mommy, do jellyfish have hearts? Sarah and I did our best to answer, but honestly, a lot of the time we were just making things up. But it didn't matter. The truth wasn't important. What was important was the shared experience, the wonder, and the feeling of being together. Eventually, we made it to the main attraction, the giant octopus exhibit. This was the thing Blayke had been most excited about. The tank was huge, filled with rocks and coral, and in the corner, a massive, red octopus was sleeping. It was curled up in a tight ball, its long arms wrapped around itself. We stood there for a long time, just watching it. It was mesmerizing. And then, as if it knew we were there, one of its tentacles uncurled and slowly, languidly, reached out toward the glass. And in that moment, it was the most beautiful thing in the world. It was pure, innocent magic. As the afternoon wore on, the kids started to get tired. We had been walking for hours, and their little legs were starting to give out. Lily was complaining that her feet hurt. Mason was getting cranky, wanting to be carried. The magical aquarium had started to feel a little overwhelming. We found a bench near the exit and sat down to rest. The kids were slumped against us, their energy drained. It was the kind of tired that only comes from a day of pure, unadulterated fun. We got them some snacks and drinks from the vending machine, and for a few minutes, there was a peaceful quiet. A calm before the next storm. It was on that bench, with my sleepy, sticky children around me, that I realized something. I was looking at Blayke, who was leaning his head against Sarah's shoulder, his eyes half closed. He had a smudge of ketchup on his cheek from lunch. I knew that if this were any other day, I would have wiped it off immediately. But today, I let it stay. It was a mark of the day, a testament to the chaos and the fun. He was no longer a baby or a toddler. He was a kid, on the verge of growing up. And I was so incredibly proud of the person he was becoming. He was kind and smart, funny and gentle. He loved his little brother and sister, even when they drove him crazy. He still held my hand sometimes when we were walking, and he still came to me with his problems. But I knew, deep down, that those days were numbered. He was growing up, and my heart was breaking and expanding all at the same time. I felt tears welling up in my eyes. "It's not over yet, buddy," I said, trying to keep my voice steady. "We still have presents and cake at home." But it wasn't about the presents or the cake. He knew it. And I knew it. It was about the day. It was about the aquarium, the treasure hunt at the park, the silly pancakes in the morning. It was about the feeling of being loved. It was about the big birthday week, and we were just getting started. It was a day that, on the outside, might look like any other family's weekend. But for us, it was the celebration of a life we had built together, and the beginning of a week that we would all remember forever. The drive home was quiet. The kids were all asleep, their heads lolling against the windows. The sun was beginning to set, painting the sky in shades of orange and pink. I glanced in the rearview mirror and saw them all sleeping peacefully. I reached over and put my hand on Sarah's knee. She looked over at me and smiled. It was a tired smile, but it was the most contented smile I had ever seen. For this. For today. For everything. I gestured vaguely at the sleeping kids. For our big birthday week. She squeezed my hand. "You don't have to thank me. This is our life." And she was right. It was. It was chaotic and messy and utterly perfect. Back at home, the energy shifted again. The sleepy quiet was replaced by a frantic burst of energy as we got ready for the evening. We had invited both sets of grandparents over for a small party. We wanted to keep it intimate. Nothing too crazy, just family. I put a brisket in the oven earlier that morning, and the aroma was starting to fill the house. It was warm and savory, a smell that just felt like home. Sarah was in the kitchen, putting the finishing touches on the birthday cake she had made the night before. It was a chocolate cake with a bright blue frosting, just the way Blayke had asked. The doorbell rang, and the house exploded into action. Lily shrieked and ran to the door, closely followed by Mason. The grandparents walked in, arms laden with presents and bags of snacks. My parents came first, my mom looking elegant as always, my dad with his usual big smile. Then Sarah's parents arrived, warm and affectionate, smothering the kids in hugs. "Happy birthday, Blayke," they all chimed in unison. The living room that had been quiet just minutes before was now buzzing with chatter. The adults sat around, drinking coffee and catching up, while the kids ran around, showing off their new toys. I stood in the doorway for a moment, watching the scene.